It was May 1990. I remember the date specifically because I was alone in my apartment and I had just finished watching the final episode of Season 2 of the TV show, Quantum Leap. This was a sci-fi show. It was May 1990. I remember the date specifically because I was alone in my apartment. I had just finished watching the final episode of Season 2 of the TV show, Quantum Leap. This was a sci-fi show. It was May 1990. I remember the date specifically because I was alone in my apartment. I had just finished watching the final episode of Season 2 of the TV show. This was a sci-fi show.
Hello, what's going on, everybody? It is spooky time here, so you guys check it out. We'll also watch a channel called Sharp Edges, and we just discovered them. They've actually been sharing a lot of their stuff with us on Twitter, which has been awesome. Thank you very much. So, hope you guys like the new little cover here, too. It's my clown face. Yes, that is my face up there. Now, let me set up here. Alright. The OBS. Jump all in. So here we got Sharp Edges. Now, I'm going to be muting this again when I start playing the videos, but first of all, let's just go take a look at the description here. We got 2 stories of paranormal, supernatural, ghosts, haunting, premonition, precognition, time glitches, UFO, deja vu, and more. Once a week, Sharp Edges presents unexplicable, you know what? That's actually one of those words that it's such a tongue twister to me. Nobody ever tried to make me say that word 10 times in a row because by the time I actually get it right, I was doing a glory dance for myself. It's one of those tongue twisters. But yeah, guys, I'll be dropping the link here again for Sharp Edges. Unless you want to drop it yourself, you're more than welcome to Sharp Edges. Now, I have only personally seen one video of yours, but I was super impressed myself. So I've been really excited to dive into this here. And we'll take a look at your playlist first. Now, you guys see that there, that 207 subscribers. We got to get Sharp Edges here. I'm telling you, once you, because I've only seen one video and I'm so impressed. Once you see it, this number right here needs to become 1K. I need to become 1,000 pretty soon. All right, let's see what we got here. Sure. Let's see what we got. Oh my gosh, everything looks too good. You know what? I don't know. Okay, let's go with these true ghost stories. That's good though. If everything looks really enticing like that, that's really awesome. So I'm really stoked. Now you guys are gonna see me pop back into the OBS there for a second. I tried to set a hotkey on it before so I could just turn it on and off, and it started screwing everything up. I think I set it like as an F5 or something, and my screen started going all funky, and I was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. Not right now. So I'm gonna pop into OBS and just turn off the audio here, just for the mic, of course. I'm gonna bring up the audio for the actual. So let me just make sure that I got this paused here. Don't worry, you guys have probably been hearing a bit of an echo there. I just realized, so I apologize for that there. But yeah, we are definitely going to go check Sharp Edges out. So let me just throw my mic on mute. Let's get her audio up and let's rock and roll, folks. Actually, I don't think it was an echo, but I'm pretty sure I had that muted. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to give you guys awesome quality content.
What do you do when relatives decide to visit? Dead relatives, that is. Sharp edges, inexplicable but true. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? Here are 3 stories that blur the boundaries between the living and those who are no longer with us. Uncle Tony. My oldest could talk before she could walk. As a toddler, she was always excited when we invited people over for a party. One particular July 4th gathering, when her godfather made his usual appearance, she was so excited to see him that she ran to him yelling, "Uncle Tony! Uncle Tony!" Her loud screeches of delight caught my attention, but I wondered who she was yelling for. I saw my brother-in-law scoop her up in his arms. I saw the whole exchange. But who was Uncle Tony? When I caught my husband's attention, I asked him, "Who's Uncle Tony?" And he answered in a really flat tone, "Chucky." I must have had quite a confused look on my face, because he quickly explained that his brother, who we always called Chucky, Rachel's uncle, who was holding her now, had a name the family never used. "His name is Anthony," he said. "He was named after my father. In fact, he's the only one who ever called him Tony." Now at this point I had known my brother-in-law for more than a decade. I even worked with him in an office for a couple of years, and I never once heard Chucky called Anthony, or Tony for that matter. I walked over to Rachel and Chucky and asked if he had told her his real name. He answered no, shaking his head. Why would I? To this day, she still calls him Uncle Tony. She's the only one in the family that does. Her grandfather told her this well-kept family secret. After all, he was the one who named him. His first son now has his name. But there was one problem with this idea. Granddad had been dead for almost 40 years. Grandma's new house. My mother-in-law, Ginny, would often joke that if she ever won the lottery, she'd buy a great big house and a brand new car. We'd laugh when she went on this way because we knew how badly she drove, and she never played the lottery. But she didn't enjoy gambling, and she didn't have Sunday drives for that matter, but she did enjoy her grandchild, Rachel. When Rachel was a baby, she'd visit her grandma and zip around her house in a walker, and she caused all kinds of havoc. She'd make the dog go scurrying away, and she'd make figurines fall off shelves. She was a one-baby wrecking crew on wheels. Sadly, Ginny died before Rachel was finally talking and walking. At family dinners, my sister-in-laws would remember her and how sad they were that they couldn't spend time with her anymore. At one family dinner, Rachel heard her aunties talk this way about her grandma and told them not to be sad. She explained that Grandma was very happy. She said, "Grandma's happy now because she has a great big house and a brand new car." The aunts were surprised and a little afraid. "How do you know that?" said Auntie Debbie. "Grandma told me last night," she told her aunt. She then went on to explain that Grandma would sit with her on her bed every night and visit. She explained, without a second thought, "Grandma told me she has a car, so she can go wherever she wants and whenever she wants. And a great big house with lots and lots of room." He's tickling my feet. One morning I was making breakfast for Rachel. She was at the age where she was out of a high chair but using a booster seat. I was in the kitchen, and I got out that bright blue plastic booster and put it at the end of the kitchen's L-shaped bench. Then I called Rachel to come and eat. She ran in as toddlers do. She climbed onto the bench, picked up the booster, and moved it from the end, nearest me, to the middle of the long bench. I didn't really mind, but now I have to reach across the table to give her breakfast. So I asked her, "Baby, why'd you have to move the chair from the end to the middle? Mummy's going to have to reach across the table to give you breakfast." She said, "Sorry, Mama, but there's a man sitting there." And she pointed to the end of the bench. I was used to Rachel's ghostly proclamations at this point. She had talked to my husband's dead father, after all, got visits from her deceased grandmother, and once asked my husband to move the cows in the living room because they were blocking her view of the television. So I just let it go and went on with putting the finishing touches on her breakfast. But when I turned around to hand her the bowl of oatmeal, I noticed her legs were crossed, causing her to lean forward on the booster. Worried that she would fall forward, I asked her to straighten out her legs. She said she couldn't. "Why, baby?" I asked. "Because the man is tickling my feet," she said. Impossibly, I understood what was going on. No, I didn't see the man. No, I didn't see hands reach out and tickling her feet. But I did remember that when my great-grandfather would visit me after church, he would sit with his top coat on, hat on the bench next to him, and a cup of coffee on the table, in the exact spot that Rachel was telling me a man now sat. And I also knew it was my grandfather for another reason. Because when I sat with Papa when I was a toddler, and he sat next to me at the end of the bench by the back door in the exact kitchen, he would reach out under the table and tickle my feet. Thanks for listening to Sharp Edges, inexplicable but true. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, be sure to hit the like button. Please subscribe and comment. I'd love to hear your questions. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges. When you see a ghost, it's not subtle. When you hear a ghost, it's not faint. When you see an object move by itself, it moves fast. Sharp Edges is true, inexplicable stories. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? Here are 3 stories that blur the boundaries between the world of the living and those who are no longer with us. Ricky. So I lived in a 3-story house, the lower story being the basement. It was about 800 square feet, and it was unfinished, and I would work down there because I could leave my papers around, and I could draw, and I could read, and I could leave my stuff undisturbed, books everywhere, and there wasn't a lot of light. I had a light bulb that used to hang from the ceiling, which was fine where I was, but outside like 5 feet, it was complete darkness. And one night, I was down there reading or writing on my chalkboard, and my brother ran down the stairs. It was a boy, blonde hair, who I thought was my brother. He looked at me, I looked at him, and he ran up those stairs so frightened. And I was like, what was that about? And I yelled out, Ricky, what do you want? Ricky was my older brother, but the one closest in age to me. So he was probably at the time 15 and I was about 11. So he didn't respond. He ran up the stairs, didn't say anything. So pretty soon I had to wrap up my stuff, go up the stairs, shut the light, and my mother and father in the living room. So they must have saw Ricky. So I said, what was that about? What did Ricky want? And she's saying, what are you talking about? And I said, he ran down the stairs, scared me to death, and he didn't even say anything. He just ran back up the stairs. She said, Ricky's working tonight. The hallway. So at one point, I was working full-time at home, setting up a new business. I was pregnant with my second child and really just exhausted time. I was so tired. So one afternoon, my husband said, you know what, just take a nap, just relax. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that time when it started getting a little dark at night. He said, let me take Rachel, she's my oldest, and you just take a nap. I said, that's a great idea. So I figured I'd take a nap in Rachel's room because she had those room darkening shades, so the place was pitch black. I love it that way. And it's the back of the house. We live in the city, so the front of the house is pretty busy, and it'd be nice and quiet back there. So I don't shut the door all the way, but I shut it a little, it's shut. Not all the way, but it's pretty shut. Turn my back to the door and go to sleep. It couldn't be very long later that I hear the door spring open. I assume someone sees me in the bed, shuts the door quickly, then runs up the hallway. It's wooden. So as they're running, they hit each banister in the hallway, like boom, 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 and then into my room, I assume. So I'm waiting to hear like the TV go on or something, but nothing. But so I said, all right, nap time over. I'm getting up. Hi, Rach, I'm home. It's good that you're home. I'm coming. So I open the door. The door is pretty shut, and I open the door and I look in the hallway, expecting to see somebody, maybe her fooling around at the end of the hallway. Nothing. I'm like, oh, she must be in my room trying to put on the TV, or maybe she's reading a book. So I go up the hallway, nothing. I am completely alone in the house. Before I could even think about what just happened, in through the door comes my husband and Rachel. I had been completely alone. There was no one in the house. But someone opened that door, saw me sleeping there, and ran away, pretty much. The lantern. So I used to have a bay window with a big, beautiful place to put decorative vases and so forth, windowsill. And when it wasn't being decorated for Christmas or Halloween, I'd have these 2 glass lanterns. And they were usable lanterns. They had oil in them and everything, but they were suspended. So they were free to move if there was wind or something like that. But they were pretty heavy, so they didn't really move. And they weren't top heavy or anything. So when I would decorate for Christmas, I would move them and put them in the storage room because I didn't want them to get broken. So one afternoon, the lanterns were on my desk, and I walked into the room, storage room, and I was probably going in there for some ribbon or something like that. And I look over at the desk at the lanterns. There's 2 of them. They're both suspended. One of them is completely still. The other one is wildly moving back and forth. I mean, at a speed that you can't even imagine. If you tried to make it move that way, you'd have to really, really work at making that thing fly back and forth. I looked at it, and then I walked over to it, and I stopped it. And I said out loud, enough of that. Thanks for listening to Sharp Edges, Inexplicable but True. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you call reality, be sure to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel, and please leave a comment. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges. In my life, I have heard, felt, and even smelled ghosts. Hasn't everyone? Sharp Edges is true, inexplicable stories. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? There is a bit of this and that, and a viewer submission. The music box. I have this music box that I keep on the windowsill in my living room. Kind of forgotten, a little dusty. To tell you the truth, I don't play it much. But I'm in the kitchen one afternoon and I hear it playing. So I run into the living room and I stare at it, and it's playing, and I figure, well, maybe it's got a little bit of music left in it and it'll stop after a couple of seconds. No, it plays the entire song. Dancing in the Dark. So one night, same living room, I'm watching a sad movie, and I shut all the lights, I shut off the movie, and I'm kind of feeling melancholy, so I grab a pillow and I'm humming and I'm dancing in the dark by myself. And I get this puff of air in my face. Needless to say, I put on all the lights, put the TV back on, and I don't dance in the dark anymore. Aunt Mary. I have an aunt that died when I was quite young. She was like my favorite aunt. She loved little girls. She had two boys. So I think of her now and then, but I especially thought of her a couple of times when I went to check on my young babies in the cribs. I had two little girls, and when they were infants, I would go into their rooms in the middle of the night to check on them, as mothers do. And not all the time, but sometimes I'd smell cigarette smoke. My aunt was a avid smoker. I always want to think that she came to check on my little ones. She always wanted a little girl. She always treated me like her own. The cold hand. One afternoon I was doing dishes. You're by the sink, looking out the window, and I feel this coldness on my hip. A coldness that you can't even describe. Like ice cold. Go right through my hip. And I thought about it, and I said to myself, what is that? And it felt like a hand, like a little bit of a pressure. And after a while, it just went away. And finally, our final story is from YouTuber Disney Queen Skelly. She tells us that Disneyland has lots of ghost stories, told mostly by employees, but not a lot from guests. She submits this one. She says, my friend is afraid to go on the Indiana Jones rides at Disneyland. It's been a childhood trauma experience for her. Sometimes she gets brave though and wants to go on, so we do. There was one time we went on, and she had her hands gripped tight on the bar in front of us. After the scene where the boulder comes at you, there's a moment of darkness before Indy tells you, that wasn't bad, was it? It was in that brief darkness I felt a hand grab my shoulder. She felt the same. But when I looked at her hands, they were still in the bar. Upon asking if she grabbed my shoulder, she said no and asked if I did the same. This happened in the last row of the car. Needless to say, we asked to be in row 1 or 2 from now on. Thank you for listening to Sharp Edges, Inexplicable but True. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges. It was May 1990. I remember the date specifically because I was alone in my apartment, and I had just finished watching the final episode of season 2 of the TV show Quantum Leap. This was a sci-fi show where the main character, Sam, goes back in time and has to set something right. He was helped by his sidekick Al, played by Dean Stockwell. In the final scene of this episode, Al, who is separated from his wife Beth by time and space, has traveled back in time to see her. He finds her crying in the living room, missing him. The episode name is MIA, and that's what he is. For a moment, you think that she's moving towards him, but instead she's moving towards the record player.
Are we actually back? Is this all good now? That was crazy. Maybe we go around there. I didn't like it. But okay. That's just OBS being OBS show, right? So, we're about to. Well, you know what? We're going to restart that video. I think it isn't ready yet. Yeah. Dance with the Ghost story. Now, mind you guys, this mic is pretty low. So, when the video starts, it's going to be a little bit loud, way louder than how I'm talking right now. Just kind of keep that in mind. Right? Okay, so let's get that on there. Back to let me just go ahead and use this really quick.
It was May 1990. I remember the date specifically because I was alone in my apartment and I had just finished watching the final episode of season 2 of the TV show Quantum Leap. This was a sci-fi show where the main character, Sam, goes back in time and has to set something right. He was helped by his sidekick, Al, played by Dean Stockwell. In the final scene of this episode, Al, who is separated from his wife Beth by time and space, has traveled back in time to see her. He finds her crying in the living room, missing him. The episode name is MIA, and that's what he is. For a moment, you think that she's moving towards him, but instead she's moving towards the wreckage. Can ghosts get jealous? When your attention is off of them, even for a little while, can they remind you that they do indeed exist? Sharp edges is true, inexplicable stories. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? Here is a true ghost story of a morning and what happened when I stepped out of a haunted house into the daylight. Be sure to stay to the end and find out what took place when I tried to get back in. The day started in the usual way. My husband went to work, I took the kids to school, and then I returned home alone to clean up the kitchen before I spent the day in my home office with my eyes glued to my 2 computer screens. Being from New England, we have 2 kitchen back doors, a heavy wooden inner door and an outside aluminum storm door. When the weather is nice, we often have the inner door open so the light comes in. The storm door, however, is closed and often hook locked. Then and now, when I'm alone, I lock the storm door with a hook at the very top of the door. We installed it that way because we have a pool and he didn't want the kids to just wander off unsupervised into the backyard. At the time of this story, the hook was new and very tight. I often needed to pry it loose to open the door. This morning, like most, before my day job took over all my attention until lunch, I headed out the back door to spend some time with my 2 dogs. We all looked forward to this 10 minutes of fun as both dogs ran through the door and I ran after them. We left the inner door wide open. I remember hearing the storm door bang shut behind me as I walked across the porch and down towards the pool in the fenced-in yard. I threw the ball a bit on our grassy section and played tag with the 2 dogs. And then we were heading back towards the back porch. Our morning ritual was done. We had a lot of fun running around, We were laughing, barking, and playing. But it was time to go in. But when I got to the back door, the storm door wouldn't open. I could see into the sunny, quiet, empty kitchen. The latch on the handle clicked, but the door wouldn't open. It even bent a bit, the door, but it still was stuck at the very top where that hook lock was located. That was odd. The dogs, expecting they were going in, were barking, their heads pressed up against the door as they anticipated it opening so that they can grab a drink of water. But I couldn't do it. I tried pushing on the door and retried the handle. I even hit it a little on the outside where the lock was located, at the top, but no luck. I finally gave up trying to pry the door open. I left the dogs in the backyard, grabbed the hidden spare key, and opened the cellar door. I then climbed the rickety wooden stairs, and thank God the cellar door leading to the kitchen was shut, but not locked. I then walked into the kitchen. The inner door was how I left it, wide open, the sun streaming in. I was really expecting to see the hook jabbed in between the door and the door jamb. No, the hook was hooked in the eye. By the time this happened, the dogs were really making a ruckus. They wanted me to open the door. They could see me from the porch, so I reached up to unlock the door. The hook was not slightly in the hole. It wasn't a little bit off. It was solidly locked tight, and I needed to pry it open with some effort. So I opened the door and let the dogs in, and I called for my husband. He must have returned home for some reason and locked me out of the house. I didn't think it was very funny, but there was nothing. So I went to see if his car was in the driveway. Not there. The two dogs and I were alone. How do you think the door happened to get locked and keep me out of the house? What do you think happened? Could it be that my resident ghost was not fond of me playing with my dogs and having a great time? Could he have been jealous of the cries of laughter coming from the backyard? Let me know what you think. Thank you for listening to Sharp Edges, Inexplicable but True. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges. What do you do when relatives decide to visit? Dead relatives, that is. Sharp edges, inexplicable but true. One morning I was making breakfast for Rachel. She was at the age where she was out of a high chair but using a booster seat. I was in the kitchen, and I got out that bright blue plastic booster and put it at the end of the kitchen's L-shaped bench. Then I called Rachel to come and eat. She ran in as toddlers do. She climbed onto the bench, picked up the booster, and moved it from the end, nearest me, to the middle of the long bench. I didn't really mind, but now I have to reach across the table to give her breakfast. So I asked her, "Baby, why'd you have to move the chair from the end to the middle? Mummy's going to have to reach across the table to give you breakfast." She said, "Sorry, Mama, but there's a man sitting there." And she pointed to the end of the bench. I was used to Rachel's ghostly proclamations at this point. She had talked to my husband's dead father, after all, got visits from her deceased grandmother, and once asked my husband to move the cows in the living room because they were blocking her view of the television. So I just let it go and went on with putting the finishing touches on her breakfast. But when I turned around to hand her the bowl of oatmeal, I noticed her legs were crossed, causing her to lean forward on the booster. Worried that she would fall forward, I asked her to straighten out her legs. She said she couldn't. "Why, baby?" I asked. "Because the man is tickling my feet," she said. Impossibly, I understood what was going on. No, I didn't see the man. No, I didn't see hands reach out and tickling her feet. But I did remember that when my grandfather, Rachel's great-grandfather, would visit me after church, he would sit with his top coat on, hat on the bench next to him, and a cup of coffee on the table, in the exact spot that Rachel was telling me a man now sat. And I also knew it was my grandfather for another reason. Because when I sat with Papa when I was a toddler, and he sat next to me at the end of the bench by the back door in the exact kitchen, he would reach out under the table and tickle my feet. Thanks for listening to Sharp Edges, inexplicable but true. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, be sure to hit the like button. Sometimes ghosts insist on making the truth come to light. My oldest could talk before she could walk. She loved to chat it up with anyone who came to visit. So as a toddler, she would get especially excited when we invited people over for a party. One particular July 4th barbecue by the backyard pool, her uncle and godfather made his usual appearance. She was so happy to see him that she ran to him yelling, Sharp edges, inexplicable but true. There are stories that make us question what we think we see. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? Or are those boundaries blurred? At times I see events unfold before they actually happen. I first see a scene and then it occurs hours, days, months, or even years after I first experience it. A car accident in the snow, a future office move. Experience first and then reality follows. Such a vision is how I came to see my second child more than 22 years ago. I met my daughter before she was born. It could all be a coincidence, but Jill and I share a lot. We were born at the same month, the same year. When we first met, we were both divorced. But the strangest twist, well, maybe not the strangest, is that we eventually married two men who are brothers. Jill married the oldest brother of the family. I married the youngest. At the time when I had my vision, I was a busy working mom of a beautiful 3-year-old. My day-to-day was hectic. I was just beginning a new business, and although life was full, my husband and I were open to adding a second child to our small young family. It was amid this mild chaos that I experienced what you could not call a dream. I was very awake. I saw a scene unfold before me, kind of like watching a movie. The picture of what I saw wasn't crystal clear. It was, in fact, a bit blurry. You could even say choppy. The mental picture was fuzzy, partially because of the sun. The sun was blinding and bright. It hit me right in the face. But through the strong light, I saw two toddlers. They were just beginning to walk, not sure-footed, but moving forward under their own energy. It was a happy scene. The children were the same height, and on their heads grew short, straight, blonde hair that was closely cropped and nowhere near their shoulders. Neither wore shoes, and their bare feet left small marks in the soft sand that they were walking on. The sun was warm, I could tell, because both children wore bright cotton shorts. In the vision, the children held hands and walked ahead and away from me along a wide open beach. They never once turned back, much to my disappointment. The scene only lasted a few seconds, but I instantly knew that they were related to each other somehow. Brothers, maybe cousins. I was immediately convinced that at least one of them was mine. After the experience, I told my husband that I knew in my heart that I had seen the future. It wasn't long after that Jill called. She had big news. She couldn't wait to share. She was pregnant. She was excited. And we were very happy for her. After all, this was her first child. But when I hung up the phone, I turned to my husband, and as I spoke, the message of the vision I had experienced earlier was suddenly very clear. She can't be pregnant, I said, because I'm not pregnant. In that moment, and not a moment before, I knew I had seen our children, Jill's and mine. Sadly, though, the moment wasn't right. Jill called a few days later to tell us she had in fact lost the baby. Time passed. In a few months, Jill was once again on the phone. She had news. She was pregnant again. It was during this phone call, the second call, that I told her about my vision. The sun, the happy feeling, the tiny footprints in the sand, the boys in cotton shorts. To my amazement, she did not question my state of mind, but she did ask a simple question. Are you pregnant? I told her I did not think so. My husband and I weren't really trying to have a baby, although I told her we would be happy to welcome a second child to the family if such a thing were to happen. Days slipped by, and Jill called again with sad news. She had a second miscarriage. I brought up my vision, and that there was a baby in her future. I was sure of it. Just not now, but soon. And she shouldn't give up hope. It was an unhappy time, but life again moved on. Finally, some weeks later, Jill called us a third time. She was again happy, but this time apprehensive. Remembering the vision, she was more than a little cautious. She said quickly on the phone, getting right to the point, I'm pregnant. She then quickly followed that joyful news with a very nervous question. Is there any way that you're pregnant too? I looked at my husband, back at the phone. You know, I could be, I said. I had no reason to think I wasn't. It was a possible situation. We lived less than a mile from the pharmacy, so my husband volunteered to run out and pick up a pregnancy test. I hung up the phone, waited for him to return, and took the test as soon as I could. This time I was, in fact, pregnant. The first thing we did was dial Jill's number to tell her the good news. We figured out the timing. We were both expecting summer babies. Our news was soon confirmed, and we found we had nearly the same due date. We even ended up with the same doctor, and we planned on having the babies at the same hospital. Less than 9 months later, Jill and I welcomed beautiful baby girls into this world. I was wrong, of course. I thought we were going to have boys. But these cousins did, in fact, have blonde hair and were born only 4 days apart. Jill's daughter was born first, and then my precious Jules. Thanks for listening to Sharp Edges, Inexplicable but True. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, If you like hearing stories that blur the sharp edges between the world we know and the world we cannot see, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges. Can you change your future? If you see what's coming, can you do anything to avoid what's coming your way? Sharp edges is true, inexplicable stories. Do sharp edges exist between what we perceive and reality? Here is a story of precognition, premonition, and unfortunately, the inevitable. I always wear my seatbelt. I live in New England. I drive in the snow. I feel that the least I can do is put on my seatbelt. I feel like at least it's a little bit safer because I hate driving in the snow. I had this vision in the summertime, and it involved something we call Linshore Drive, which is a street that's right on the water, and it gets icy and it gets snowy, and I don't really drive that way, so I was like, okay, well, I'm driving in the snow and I get into a bad accident. I fishtail, I slide sideways, I do a 360. So I'm saying to myself, I'm going to wear that seatbelt from now on. But I start a new job. And guess where I have to drive by every day? Linshore Drive. And I said, fine, as long as I have on my seatbelt, I'll be fine. So I look out the window one morning and it's snowing. I mean, really, really snowing. But it's a new job. I have to go. So I get in the car, I put on my seatbelt, click, and I said, as long as I take my time, I'll be fine. So I stopped driving and I realized, I got to stop and get newspapers. I needed them that morning. So I stop at this little store on the way, it's on the highway, and I run in to get the newspapers that I need that morning. And it's a quick little thing. I go and grab the newspapers and I run back into the car and I throw the newspaper on the seat, throw my hat on the seat, throw my gloves on the seat. At this point, the car's nice and warm. I'm going to be fine. Guess what? I pull out of the drive, right back on the highway, didn't put on my seatbelt. But I realized that there's a lot of lights between me and that road that I had seen this vision of the accident on. So I decide at the next light, I will put that seatbelt on because I feel like everything has to click, right? Everything has to work out. I have to be without the seatbelt to be in an accident, and I'm going to take care of that right away. So I'm behind this plow on a small highway called 107. And we're going pretty slow, maybe 35, and it's really snowing. And he's not only plowing, but he's also throwing rock salt on the road. And these things are rocks, and they're going on the ground, and they're jumping, and they're hitting my windshield. And even if I slow down and stay back, they're still causing my windshield they're banging off my windshield. I can't see, so I'm going to go around the plow and get to the light and put on my seatbelt. But I noticed there's a little ridge that the plow is making. I said, that'll be fine. So when I go over the ridge, of course, I fishtail, I turn 360 around, I'm sliding sideways, and I hit the guardrail. At this point now, the plow is still going. He doesn't care. I look in my rearview mirror. People have stopped, so no one else. I'm not hitting anybody else. And I look down. Of course, I don't have on my seatbelt, and I careen across the two lanes again and hit the curb. And I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm done. Nope. I hit the curb and went back over and hit the guardrail again. I totaled the car. And I was nowhere near Linshore Drive. It was 107. I was in between. If you go off this road, you go into the marsh. So I'm happy that that was the worst of it. So I was right about the accident. I was right about the snow. I was right about that seatbelt. I didn't have it on, but I was wrong about the actual place that it happened. I thought I could change it. I'm wondering, do you guys think that you could change the future if you see it, if you get ready for it? I thought I was, but it comes at you fast, that's for sure. Thank you for listening to Sharp Edges, Inexplicable but True. If you like listening to true stories that make you question what you see and call reality, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment. And finally, if you have a true story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to sharpedges2021@gmail.com. Until next time, look out for those sharp edges.
All right, now I know you guys can hear me there. I just had a whole entire spiel, and clearly I wasn't on the right thing. Isn't that a bit of an issue when OBS decides it's going to open up two separate things here? Well, basically, I was just saying goodbye to you guys. Um, and Mark, yes, you should totally go something. Do it, do it. And if you guys really enjoyed this content and you have not subscribed to Sharp Edges yet, make sure you definitely do it up. But until next time, everybody, you all keep it spooky and stay safe. Me and Jenno will be coming back with a hardcore paranormal vengeance once we get our brand new camera. Yes! Alright, everybody.